to a wider audience, and certain conduct is unacceptable and will not be tolerated. Should any person not wish to be recorded, I advise that they leave the meeting room prior to any statements being made. Any defamatory statements made are not the position of council and will remain an individual's opinion. Council accepts no responsibility for any defamatory statements, and all liability remains with the person making the remarks. Councillors, I might ask Councillor Sutherland if he could do the acknowledgement to country, please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to say Yama Day, Gomeroi, Wallabargan Yani, Wunungalawa, Yanamu Murray, Maramara, Nale Down, Dilly Yanbali, Garnamaris Gangle, Gomrang Amlanginda, Benalanginda, Wenangalawa. And that's the language spoken by our Gomeroi people right across this community and across the northwest of New South Wales, acknowledging the country that we're on, which is the land of Gomeroi people, and Mr Mayor, paying respects to our elders, both past and present, who have cared and still care for this very country. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sutherland. We'll move there on to the meeting prayer. I'll ask all those who wish to stand, please. In the absence of a pastor, I will read the prayer. Almighty God, we humbly beseech thee to vouchsafe thy blessing upon this council. Direct and prosper our deliberations to the advancement and glory and the true welfare of the people of the Regional Council and Australia. Amen. Councillors, we'll move on to the order of business, and the first order of business is apologies and leave of absence, and we are all here tonight, so we'll move then on to item 2, which is community consultation. Councillors, we have a number of people that have registered to speak tonight, and I will go through the list. And those that do speak, if they're speaking on a development matter, they need to disclose whether or not they've given any financial support or supporting kind to any of the councillors or staff. First one is Campbell McIntosh. Please come to the podium, and because we've got quite a number tonight, and as we always do, we limit our presentations to about 3 minutes. Thanks, Campbell.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I have no financial contributions or any to here today. Mayor, councillors, General Manager and council staff, thank you for the opportunity to speak before you tonight about our exciting project, the Menzies. Noreen, thank you for your support. When things were personal, you have been there with me every step of the way on this exciting project for Tamworth. We have been a team for over 30 years. During this time, we have been active members of the Tamworth community. I'm a past president of the Chamber of Commerce, so I know how to listen. Great cities are not built on negativity. They are built by forward planning councils who get the policy settings right. Visionaries, and most importantly, the Tamworth people. 2 years ago, we submitted the Menzies development application to council. The process so far has been exciting and at times challenging, but we have listened to the community. We adjusted the scale of the project. We sought engineering solutions where necessary. We worked closely with the Tamworth Regional Council Planning Department, and we made compromises, but most importantly, we listened. There is no overshadowing. We have the correct setback from boundaries, and our acoustic design consultant has engineered double glazed windows so there will be no sound egressing into our apartments, and therefore we can live and exist with our neighbours. Our design team did not put their heads in the sand. We worked with Council's Planning Department to find solutions and a path forward. We thank the Planning Department for this open process. We believe the Menzies offers the complete package: a brewery, coffee shop, restaurants, commercial space and lifestyle CBD. Our research over and over again clearly identified that owners wanted the sounds, the vibrancy and the atmosphere of the CBD. This exciting project clearly aligns itself with the Council's visions of CBD living and is also in line with the Blueprint 100 strategy. The brewery, the restaurant and the Menzies will help bring hospitality and leisure back to the CBD and create a vibe and excitement. The Menzies scale and design beautifully captures and enhances the surrounding buildings. Marie and I have worked hard and are fortunate to own 3 heritage listed properties in Marriott Street, and we are excited to see this final piece of the puzzle completed. Our development complements the surrounding heritage properties. With the City Blueprint 100, Marie and I have done is get caught up in this exciting opportunity for Tamworth. This project is worth over $20 million for our economy. There will be construction jobs, and this will be a huge shot in the arm for the construction industry. Local is our motto. Tonight we are surrounded by family and friends, and hopefully our future neighbours in the Menzies, who are here also to support our vision and experience the atmosphere, the vibrancy and the sounds of CBD living. For the last couple of days, Marie and I have been inundated with hundreds of text messages of support. Tamworth is a vibrant city where there is strong undercurrent of silent majority who want to see a project like the Menzies get the green light tonight and help kickstart fresh life back into our beautiful town in CBD.
Thank you. I'll now call on the second speaker of the night, Daniel Whitten, to speak on the development.
Thank you for the opportunity to address council. My name's...
Go on, yeah, just state your name and your item you're speaking to, and have you given any contribution?
My name's Daniel Whitten. I'm speaking in regards to the DA 2022, the one that Campbell just spoke about, and I haven't been party to any donations or anything to council. Thank you for the opportunity to address council. I'm co-owner of the Tamworth Hotel. My business partner Luke Prout, who's going to also talk tonight, and I have operated the hotel since November 2016. We've previously made 3 detailed submissions opposing this development. These submissions included reports from independent expert planners, acoustic consultants and heritage consultants. My business partner and I are pro-development. However, it must be well designed and consider the future. This development has received over 360 objections. Many of the reasons for objection have not been addressed through design modification. I'm shocked that this development is being recommended for approval. It fails to adhere to the apartment design guidelines, council's own DCP, and sets a poor design and planning precedent for intensification of the CBD. I implore you to think about this DA as the first of many for the future intensification of Dow Street. This development relies on Tamworth's Blueprint 100 strategy, which we support, as a reason for ignoring many of the existing controls, including the DCP and the apartment design guidelines. Council should focus on an equitable outcome for all landowners and respect existing use rights. Council must make its own assessment of ours and the public submissions and not dismiss the core issues as being considered and, in our opinion, not adequately addressed. There's 4 major points that my business partner and I would like to focus on tonight. Noise, building separation, overshadowing and parking. My business partner will talk about the noise and the parking dimensions of our concerns. I'll talk about building separation and overshadowing. Referring to the design, Tower 2 is the back tower on Dow Street. It's 8 stories high from Dow Street at approximately 29 metres. There is a setback from the boundary, from my reading of the architectural plans, of 0.57 of a metre. That much. If we were to do the same thing and I was to build 8 stories on the boundary, I could hold hands with my neighbour. Is that good planning? Is that good design? I don't think so. It doesn't happen anywhere else. What if there was a fire breakout between the buildings? How is ventilation going to happen? Biggest belief. The applicant acknowledges that they are not compliant with building setback. However, justifies this because the DA has not been lodged by us for future development. This is poor planning. A good planning outcome would result in a fair and equitable use for all landowners. The apartment design guidelines which govern apartment development in this state are quite clear. They say that 9 stories and above, which is over 25 metres, which in this case it is, there should be a 24-metre separation between habitable rooms and balconies. There should be 18 metres of separation between habitable and non-habitable rooms and 12 metres between non-habitable rooms. If that's on the boundary, it's 6 and 6 and it's shared amenity. 0.57 metres is not that sort of number. In our view, there can be no way that council could form a view that the proposal demonstrates consistency with SEP 65, which is the apartment design guidelines, and is capable of achieving this in future development. With regards to the height, which results in overshadowing, the first tower, which is next to the Tamworth Hotel Beer Garden, will overshadow the beer garden in winter. It'll completely overshadow it. So people come into our beer garden. One of the draw cards is it's a light, sunny, breezy, open area, and it has some shade in the garden, but it still enjoys lots of sun. Who wants to sit in a shaded beer garden overlooked by neighbours on the boundary? The second concern is back to Tower 2, which is on Dow Street, and is 8 stories high or approximately 29 metres. That's high rise. It's twice the height of the CH and PRD buildings and will be an eyesore in the CBD.
Daniel, I'll have to get you to bring your presentation.
Sure.
I've given you a bit of leniency there.
No worries, thank you. I'll jump to the conclusion if that's all right. A couple of paragraphs. Despite the issues raised in the previous submissions, the design, bulk and scale of the development remains entirely inappropriate, non-compliant and unjustified. The proposed development will have an unreasonable and detrimental economic and operational impact to the Tamworth Hotel. It's crucial that councillors in their assessment of this DA do not accept the minimal responses to matters raised and overwhelming public opinion against the development. We ask that council reject this DA in its current form, force a redesign and an update of the LEP and the DCP to ensure that development is fair and equitable, and more importantly, a holistic approach to the delivery of Blueprint 100 in the CBD is undertaken. This development in isolation sets a precedent that won't be able to be achieved by others. Thank you.
Thanks, Daniel. I'll now call on the third speaker tonight, Luke Brown. Luke, if you can state your name, the item that you're talking to, and because it's a planning matter, declare any donations that you've made.
Luke Proughton speaking on the DA 2022-0281, and I've not made any donations to any parties involved. I'll watch the time. Good evening. Thank you for allowing me to come and speak in regards to the DA for 143-145 Mary Street. That all said, we're co-owners of the hotel, been there for 7 years. I was raised in Tamworth. I have a great amount of love for Tamworth, and I want nothing more than see the city grow and prosper. I'd like to preface my address by stating that we're 100% pro-development. When done with a clear vision where problems are resolved in planning stages and not created due to poor planning. The two issues I will discuss that we feel require more attention to design, traffic and parking, as well as shared land use noise mitigation or noise complaints, sound issues. Traffic and parking. An updated traffic impact assessment has been provided with a revised application. This assessment fails to address the shortfall in parking, and attempts to justify it are unsatisfactory. A total of 34 parking spaces are proposed, an acknowledged shortfall of 56 spaces. No visitor, guest parking or retail parking seem to be available. We note that council has levied the developer for the shortfall in parking. However, we believe this is an unsatisfactory outcome. The parking concessions and the one-off payment to council do not take into account future development on Dow Street. It is once again seems to be a case of first in best dress. I suppose to simplify that, we want Dow Street to grow. We want more apartments there. Hell, Daniel would like to build apartments down the back there as well. At the moment, if there's a shortfall of that many car parks with this development, where are these other car parks going to come from in future? Where, you know, it is already a busy street, you know. I think that needs to be revisited and hopefully a better solution. Now, probably the main one, and again, we've been working on this, myself, council, New South Wales government and other stakeholders. We've been working to develop a special entertainment precinct in hope to help future-proof the relationship between live venues and development going forward in the future for our city. I'll take this opportunity to praise council's enthusiasm and support for the SEP overlay. I know that council has a vision for Tamworth, and this vision requires planning to foresee and circumvent issues arising so that the CBD and development can thrive. This is where I take issue with the design of the proposed development. The New South Wales EPA published a noise guide for local government in February this year. I know that's recent, probably not across it. In the section on residential or noise-sensitive development proposed near existing noise, the noise guide states, when a council is determining a DA or being consulted on a project, noise issues need to be considered. Generally, it's a relatively easy to identify potentially noisy development, and conversely, a development that may be sensitive to noise. Typical noise-sensitive developments include residential developments, hospitals, places of worship, and community centres. A noise impact statement assessment is warranted, and when a noise-sensitive development is proposed in a noisy area, which our CBD is, the complexity of the noise impact assessment and the council's capacity to critically review the assessment will vary. But the first critical step will always be to identify the potential for noise-related land use conflicts, which nobody wants. Conditions of approval can be used to ensure a proposed noise-sensitive development is designed in a way that protects internal noise amenity and require appropriate noise mitigation measures. This certainly doesn't seem to be considered when we consider this development. I will be honest, I quite actually like the aesthetic of the development. I think it's probably pretty brilliant for the town. I have one major issue. As per the architectural plans, the living areas for apartments in Tower 1 are approximately 6 metres from the Tamworth Hotel stage. Not our fence, not anything, not the bar, not the stage. So somebody, where our good mayor's sitting, is literally going to be laying in their bed, and their window's going to be there, and there's going to be a live band on that stage. Now, at this point, double glazing has been added to the design, and some sound metal panels that will be basically redundant.
Look, I'll have to ask you, I've given you extra.
Sure. What I request is, and I know the horse seems to be bolted on the matter, have a look at this apartment that is going to be 6 metres from the stage. Someone's going to be living in there, and with local legislation that's just gone through by the New South Wales government, I feel our venue will actually be protected, but whoever's living in there is not going to have a leg to stand on when it comes to noise complaints. I believe that nobody wins unless everybody wins. I want a win-win outcome for everyone involved in this. I'm not afraid for the whole thing to go through, but I just hope that someone can have a look at this apartment that's 6 metres away from the stage and try and mitigate what's going to happen.
Luke, I'll have to get you to.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for your time.
The next speaker is Peter Gill. I'll ask you the same, Peter, if you're speaking to what number, you're speaking to what item, and also whether you've made any donations.
Peter Gill, made no reportable political donations. Mayor, councillors, staff and members of the public. Tonight I have the company of my apprentice, Phoebe Lee. Compactness of development in the CBD is an underlying blueprint 100. At what cost must this come in a city that lacks viable public transport? Again, we see yet another second best proposal for development coming in short on parking. Computation of the numbers is noted, and the tendency of the assessment to run at the lower bounds is noted, and ditto item 7.1 is on the agenda. The stipulated legislative requirements are considered to be capital city centric, based on far more extensive availability and coverage of public transport, and fail to recognise the predominant mode of travel available to those who live out of the city bounds. Simply for the convenience of the developer, it should not be as easy as contributing dollars to rectify a problem of their own making. There is no discussion in the business paper proposal to guarantee that the funds, which are way short of a true cost of provision, will be appropriated to benefit the area in an expedient or efficient manner. Nor will the platitudes of time of use resolve the problem. Food businesses and pubs rely on the lunch and after work trade as well. There are other businesses affected. The restraints of state government Main Street policy, and again referring to item 7.1 on the agenda before as a case in point, will contribute to increasing pressure on the CBD as the population doubles, exacerbated by the limited transport modes available, that is by car, to those who need to access CBD-based services. Every way one turns, the availability of CBD parking is being squeezed. Diversification is being limited by state government policy. It is my view that the proposal is not a good fit given the impost it will impose on access to parking in this area. I further suggest the included businesses will suffer from a lack of accessible parking for their customers. There is no mention of changes to current parking restrictions this development may cause. Perhaps when the CBD becomes choked by a lack of appropriate parking and business closes or relocates, we will then reflect on the opportunity and vibrance lost. I personally have spent 20 years commuting and working in Sydney. The desertification after hours is not a way of life I desire to see replicated here. In closing, I take this opportunity to wish all best wishes for a happy and safe festive season. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Gill. We'll go to our next speaker, Stephen Maher, speaking on line 11. Thanks, Stephen.
Mr Mayor, councillors, general manager, directors, ladies and gentlemen. I just want to draw your attention to some of the items in the financial statements. Firstly, item C1-8 in Annexure 2, page 1870. You've had about 2,000 pages to read over the last couple of days. Noting that the Ray Walsh House has impairment due to asbestos valued at roughly $8 million. Secondly, I draw your attention to balance sheet on the pilot training school, where it is showing, sorry, I forgot to put in the page number on that one, showing negative equity of approximately $9 million due to the write-down in valuation. It is understood there are some issues with the plumbing, air conditioning, and due to lack of maintenance, there might be some pest infestation in that building. We suggest that you possibly have a look at that issue. Finally, I draw your attention to the recent public acknowledgement by council to consider the sale of Ray Walsh House. I gather that none of the councillors were aware of that coming decision. It is requested that all documents related to the asbestos contamination, as per the public letter recently issued to all of you, be made available to councillors and the public before negotiations commence with developers. It is requested that these documents be released without delay.
Excuse me, you were going to talk on 9.11.
Yes. Yes, I've just referred to Ray Walsh House and noted that that's in the financial statements. The second item was the air pilot school, and the third item is in relation to Ray Walsh House as well. That concludes my address. It's very short. I know you're busy tonight. Thank you.
I don't normally make any comments, but I just want to make one, Steve, that there's been no public comments about selling Ray Walsh House. Absolutely none. We'll move on to item 8.9. Henry Cuppett. Is Henry here tonight? Henry's not here? So we'll move on. Thank you, all of those that participated in community consultation. Councillors, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda. That's minutes from the previous meeting submitted for approval. Could I have someone move their true and correct record? Councillor Mears, seconded Councillor Coates. Councillor Mears, do you have any questions or comments on that?
No, Mr Mayor.
Any other councillors got questions or comments on those minutes? I'll put that being forward as a correct record. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against, carried. We'll move on to the next item on the agenda, disclosures of interest. Is any councillor got any disclosures of interest? There being no disclosures of interest, we'll move on to the next item, which is the Merrill Minute. Item 5, there is no Merrill Minute. So we'll move on to 6, notice of motion. There is no notice of motion. So we'll move straight into open council reports. And we'll move to 7, environment planning. And we'll go straight to 7.1, construction of a building associated infrastructure on the use and part of the building for the purpose of a supermarket going to the road. So could I have somebody move and second that, please? I have a mover, councillor Tickle, seconded councillor Sutherland. Do you want to speak to that, councillor Tickle?
Thank you. Thanks, Mr Mayor. The proposed development of the supermarket and also a provision therefore a considerable amount of retail space is a development which is going to support our existing and proposed growth in the South Tamworth area and also in Killala. So short details, there's only one supermarket in Killala, and Killala continues to expand, as has South Tamworth. And of course, when the Arcadia development happens, it will be expanding even further. It's a very detailed report with considerations given to all elements in the planning, including the traffic impacts. The first stage, which is the supermarket stage, will see the construction of a roundabout at Craig's End Lane, and that is a particular intersection that we receive a lot of comment about and requesting a roundabout. The second stage, when the entire complex is complete or under construction, another roundabout down at Jack's Mark Drive. So all in all, this will complement our existing services, our retail services in Tamworth.
Thanks, councillor Tickle. Any councillor wish to speak against this development? Any further comments? Councillor Mears.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I do support the development DA 2023-0354. In part as it breaks a previously imposed stranglehold of development of similar projects. In my opinion, clause 7.4 of the Tamworth Regional Environmental Plan has stifled development outside the CBD. This has been voiced to me on numerous occasions over the past 3 years. Many residents have voiced concerns on what they only describe as a protectionism for businesses in the CBD. For those raising those concerns, there has no evidence been provided. To have an opportunity to support a variation to the gross floor areas by way of clause 4.6. Variation should alleviate some of those residents' concerns and should give confidence in further development outside of the CBD as their population grows and our town footprint expands. My only concern is the development, as I have seen it, has a potential to significantly impact traffic movements in and out of the Arcadia development via Rodeo Drive and through Tamworth Sporting Precinct. The current and future changes to vehicular movement appear to prepare Rodeo Drive as a major traffic corridor to this development.
Councillor Rodder.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I also support this development. It probably is overdue, considering the size of South Tamworth and Hillview areas. It has been growing, and in fact it's the biggest area of the city of Tamworth in terms of growth. And the only supermarket is obviously Killala and Coles at Southgate. So it will be a handy addition to that part of Tamworth. I guess the only concerns I would have is, do we have any update on the upgrade of Gunneganoo Road, the duplication, and drainage issues to Barnes Gully and Gunnaganoo Creek caused by obviously concentrating more stormwater into those tributaries to the Peel River. Would there be any advice on that?
General Manager may help us there.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just at a high level, so obviously the federal government did their infrastructure review and confirmed the Gunnaganoo Road duplication project survived the review of those rural and regional projects. So we're working closely, the staff, Peter Risch's directorate, are working closely with Transport for New South Wales around the early works program, and then also the finalisation of the design for Gunnaganoo Road. We're having fairly detailed discussions even right now around the first stages of that and trying to accelerate the roundabout construction on the end of Craigens Lane that would service this development, obviously with an appropriate contribution from the developer as well, and those discussions are progressing quite well. And in relation to the drainage, so council obviously considered the acquisition of a fairly major property just recently. The solutions around stormwater drainage incorporate the acquisition of that property.
Further questions or further comments? Councillor Southwell.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I just wanted to make a brief comment just to say that with this development, the biggest issue here is really the change or the varying in the development around the gross floor area, which is changing, increasing from the 2,500. I think that's just worth noting. But as Councillor Tickle said, like, this really is important for the area of South Tamworth and Councillor Bronner. I think as the city and the region grows, this development will be a good thing for particularly that area, as well as our sporting precinct, Equine Centre as well. So thank you.
Councillor Beds.
Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor. Without going in any further detail, I will be supporting the recommendation, and I think, as my fellow councillor said, it's an actual linchpin that'll benefit that entire southern area, because it is now growing and it will grow as the Acadia and the other subdivisions actually take place. So it's a vitally needed public infrastructure for the public to be able to use. So totally supported. Thanks, Mr Mayor.
Further comments, councillors? Councillor Coates and then Councillor Beds.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I just want to agree with my fellow councillors in terms of I believe the actual impact on supermarkets in the CBD will be minimal, because there's actually 3 supermarkets on the southwest of town. There's one in Robert Street, one at Southgate and one at Kalala. And I believe if any of this shopping is going to be impacted, is going to be more likely to be those particular areas. But I also believe that impact will be quite minimal. And as Councillor Rodder mentioned, I also had some concerns about the stormwater management, and having heard that we have purchased land to address that. But I did notice that in the latest urban street stormwater management plan that we actually didn't mention Kalala Lane in terms of impact of stormwater. So I'm assuming we're ahead of the game with that. So thank you, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Berg.
Just to be brief again in support of it, Mr Mayor, the old shopping world clause keeps impacting and keeps raising its head, where Tamworth doesn't want to be a city that has cities outside the CBD. But I think that this development will enhance the southern part of the city. That's where the growth is. That's where Arcadia will also have some sort of need, when it reaches a certain critical mass, to also supply access for food and groceries to people and other amenities as well. So it's just part of Tamworth growing, and it's great to see. Not unusual. Since I've been on council, I don't think I've seen something that's had the whole of council support. But in the absence of someone speaking against it, I guess that's what's going to happen with this development tonight.
Councillors, further comments? There's no further comments. I'll put the recommendation. This being a development matter, we have to show of hands. All those in favour? Aye. Those against? Carried unanimously. Councillors, will now move on to the next item, which is 7.2, mixed development in commercial residential apartments. Do I have a mover and a seconder, please? Move councillor Tickle, seconded councillor Sutherland. Councillor Tickle, do you wish to speak to that?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This is a moment I've been waiting for probably 10 years. So finally it's arrived. There's been an identified need for the CBD living for many years. So finally, and thanks to the proponents and council staff, we've reached this point. It's even more exciting with all the additions. Like 10 years ago, we wouldn't have thought of incorporating a pub and a cafe, and this is making the whole area a more diverse, exciting area to be part of. And as has been said by the speakers, it's part of our blueprint, it's part of our vision. I'd just like to focus actually on the apartment part of the building and the absolute need for this style of living in Tamworth. We have a severe shortage of apartments in an accessible area for downsizers, and in fact for a lot of young professionals and others seeking that type of accommodation. However, there is certainly an identified need with people ready to purchase these and any other developments that may happen. We pride ourselves on providing a diversity of housing throughout all areas in our CBD, all areas in Tamworth Regional Council area, and I'll include the smaller areas in that as well. So this goes a long way to addressing that need. It also helps with our housing shortage that we have at the moment. We hear about the housing shortage not only in Tamworth but right throughout New South Wales and in fact nationally. This will immediately, or has the potential to immediately free up 22 residences, making those available for other occupants. So I have pleasure in moving this evening, and I look forward to seeing the development, and thank you to all of those submissions, because I feel they've been adequately addressed. The heritage component, the parking, we've got plans for that. Of course we need places to park, and I feel that's been addressed as well, and the noise. That the Tower 1 has been moved towards the back of the side of the building so that it's not over the beer garden. Overshadowing, we've got reports in the enclosures to say that there won't be overshadowing, so the information before us is very, very thorough. And also the shared, one of the buildings said the building separation, well, take a walk up Peel Street. There's even a hotel with common walls. So hopefully that won't be an issue, and if the owner of that block's looking to expand, well, that's great too. Maybe there's going to be even more CBD in that area. So thank you again to everyone involved in bringing it to this point.
Thanks, Councillor Tickle. Anyone wishing to speak against that recommendation? Councillor Mears.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I've given significant consideration to both the proponent and the opponents of the development. Right from the outset, and I know much of it has been just sorted out, I still had a number of issues I had concerns for over a long period of time in regards to the building separations. There was overshadowing issues, and I know there's a report that says there is none. There is also another report that says there is some. So it's a difficult development to look into. Like all the previous speakers and the councillors, I do support Blueprint 100, but at times you've got to look at what cost. I did note quite early that there were issues raised to the EPA, and I did go through a lot of that over the last couple of weeks. My concerns still remain the same, that under the law, offensive noise is characterised as offensive noise is described as that interferes unreasonably with or is likely to interfere unreasonably with the comfort and rest of a person who is outside of the place where the noise is coming from. I don't know what they call it, but the kids these days call it doof doof music. And if anyone knows much about sound waves, specially bass music does travel, and it travels through walls, through the ocean, etc., etc. So my concerns are that with live bands and music specifically playing at deep bass, there would be some interference with the residents living next door. That's where we go back to the EPA too, and it's a very difficult position either party are in. I've already said the definition of, what offensive noise is. And under the Environmental Protection Act of 97, I think it was, under prevention, under Section 96 of the Act, Council can fine on the spot an individual $750 for breaching the sound regulations, which are not stipulated in decibels, and or issue an individual fine of $1,500 to a corporation. Then further in the Act, under clause 268, clause 268, under noise abatement order of the Act, this order can be issued by a local court independently of other regulators and other methods to stop the offensive noise have failed. So therefore, police could be called, council could be called, and if it's after hours, I would assume that on most occasions we wouldn't have staff to go out there to monitor the noise, and I might be wrong on that. And the parts of those courts can then order a noise abatement direction under the same section, section 268. A noise abatement order can be issued when offensive noise is a one-off problem. So that can be done on one complaint. That direction follows. The direction can be given to stop making the noise, can be issued at any time of the day or night, it's not time specific, can remain in place for up to 28 days and cannot be appealed. On-spot fines can also be applied and can also come with the seizure of equipment used to make that noise. So the difficulties of this development are, again, the separation and the music. Do we leap forward with Blueprint 100, which I think is marvellous, but at what expense? Does it mean the potential closing of another business to facilitate a new one? And they're my concerns. And until issues of that nature are resolved, my vote will be no.
Further speakers? Councillor Ryan.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm not really sure if the Tamworth Hotel is a doof sort of venue, but
like music.
I did note that the state government have just passed through both houses of the Parliament 24-hour economy legislation vibrancy reforms amendment bill 2023. Now, I'm not sure when that will be receive royal assent, but that I think potentially addresses Councillor Mears' concerns in relation to noise. But in relation to the speaker in public consultation that mentioned the tenancy 6 metres from the stage, that is a concern, and I'm just wondering what mitigation would be in place to address that. I am concerned about overshadowing and the impact on the old Tamworth Hotel. It's a fine heritage building, and I wouldn't want to see it impacted as just as much as I wouldn't want the building next door impacted greatly. And that I guess brings me to the question about, would demolition of the rear of that building, that heritage listed building, only be sufficient to permit, at the rear of it, to permit, it wouldn't be the whole facade or anything like that, but it would be retaining as much of the heritage features as possible in that development. In terms of car parking, I understand the concerns of impacted residents and even the Tamworth Hotel, because you can imagine there's not a lot of car parking spaces there at the moment. We sold that one next to the Tamworth Hotel bottle shop, which will be, integral part of this development. And then I'd be concerned about obviously Dow Street, which has not a lot of car parks, the Tamworth Hotel car park itself, Burke Street and Murray Street, and I see even Murray Street filling up pretty quickly these days as well. And it's great that council marked out the car parks in front of that section of Murray Street, both sides. And also, of course, the railway station car park as well. I know we had that workshop to discuss the deficit in car parking spaces, and I hope that that will those concerns will be addressed in time as the project progresses. But I guess that concern, my main concern is the setback, the impact on the units, and of course I don't want any vexatious complaints from the residents. I guess they've got to be understand that if they buy a residence in that, a tenancy in that structure, that it comes with the added bonus of having music next door frequently, and because it's like the Longyard Hotel. I would hate to think that the aged care facility next door would impact it as well. And no, but I don't think anyone at this table would like to see that happen. And for me, I appreciate the work that the proponents have put into this, and tonight I will support it.
Further comments, councillor? Oh, sorry. Did you have one?
Yeah. So the concern in relation to the concern in relation to that unit adjacent the stage.
I might ask Jan if she wants to make comment, or maybe Sam or Mitch. Sam, who would you like?
You can if you like, Sam.
I'll just through you, Mr. Mayor, that the right adjacent to the beer garden, they're service departments, so they're sort of on that more of a temporary accommodation rather than permanent. So all the permanent residents would be in those units that are in the tower that's fronting Dow Street.
So that's covered in condition 43, 40 decibels at any time, is that right? Is that what it's?
Just while he's looking that up.
I believe so.
Councillor, you also raised a number of other matters. Do
Yeah.
you expect him to comment on?
Sorry, and the demolition of the rear of the building next door to the Tamworth Hotel.
It's very minimal. I don't know if you were able to see it on the plans provided. It's not
It's
that
not much.
it is very minimal. And there was a heritage assessment done, which basically said that was acceptable under the circumstances. So.
And the minister, the current minister, John, what's his name, the nighttime economies. Graham. He's been up here, looked at all this stuff. Tamworth will be one of those areas, probably one of the first impacted on by some of that legislation, which will basically put an umbrella over some of those entertainment areas, so they can't be impacted on negatively.
And Mr. Mayor, if I just add before Sam responds, there is an Australian standard that looks at what acoustic treatment you have to have if it's in a residential apartment in terms of balconies and so on. And what's been applied here is the most stringent requirement in terms of acoustic treatment. So certainly that's going to assist. It's not going to mean there'll be no noise, but it means it complies with the Australian standard, which is a very reasonable amount above the background noise level, and that's how the noise assessments work, taking into account the background noise level. Within the CBD, it's not silent. It's never going to be silent, and so you add on that 5 decibel above that, and that becomes the noise level that needs to be complied with, and during different times of the day, it's different now, and that's all explained in the report. But I think in terms of complaints and the potential for complaints that would shut down the adjoining hotel, one of the things that needs to be remembered is the hotel also has a liquor licence which sets the decibels, the noise limits it has to meet. So if it's meeting those noise levels and not going above that, it is a lot less likely that any complaint would actually be considered valid. So really, again, the neighbours, there's requirements on both of them.
Sam, do you?
Oh, sorry, yeah, just through you, Mr. Mayor, just in terms of condition 43, yes, so essentially is what Gina was just talking about there. They have to provide certification prior to the issue of a construction certificate to council to confirm that those requirements under the acoustic treatments that they've proposed as part of their report are implemented into the design of the actual development, and that needs to be confirmed and provided before they even start construction.
Further comments, councillors? Councillor Southwood and Councillor...
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just briefly, I guess I think the proponent, Campbell McIntosh, highlighted this particular development perfectly when he said it is exciting, it's been exciting and at times challenging. I think that pretty much summarises perhaps how some councillors and also some of our team may have found this particular development. I personally have had some issues around the overshadowing, the parking issue, the noise and the setbacks. So just speaking, I think they've all been spoken about enough. I think the parking's been addressed. I'm happy to see the bicycle racks as well, and I think our active transport strategy is something we're also trying to encourage more, particularly if people are living in the CBD. There may be less need for having, more vehicles. I think the setbacks and some of the other issues have been addressed by the proponent. It's been a very, very long process, this particular DA, and we've been briefed on it a number of times. And thank you to the staff who have put in countless hours on this one as well. So there's some of the issues, I guess I'd say. And then from a positive perspective, as Councillor Tickle has already highlighted, this DA does meet many needs. It meets our housing needs, it meets our strategic documents in blueprint, including city living. And I'd like to thank the proponents for probably working with us, as this is our first one that we're really getting off the ground. So it will add to the social vibrancy and fabric of our community. And as highlighted here within the report, the site is considered suitable for the proposed mixed use, and it is not considered to be contrary to the public interest, nor result in a significant adverse social, environmental or economic impact. So the key issues have been resolved satisfactorily. So I think that's probably really summarising this development in total. It's exactly the look and feel that we are going for. But in saying that, I do definitely feel for the Tamworth Hotel, and I thank Luke and Daniel for coming here tonight. I'm hoping that these two iconic pubs and mixed-use spaces can coexist. And I'd like to wish everyone the best for the future. Thanks.
Councillor Berg.
Thanks very much, Mr. Mayor. And Mr. Mayor, I'd like to endorse also Councillor Southwell's and Councillor Tickle's comments, and in particular Campbell and Marie McIntosh, who are here tonight, who have a history of good quality, well thought out, considered developments. I know 2 years is a long time. I know that they've had to reshape and remodel to conform to some of the issues that were raised with regards to the development. Car parking is clearly always an issue, and 56 car parks, the way in which we as a council address the compensatory nature of that by applying a dollar rate per car park that's under doesn't really benefit the proponents at all, because those car parks that will be built or delivered won't necessarily be proximate to their building. So, hopefully they can come up with something that betters that than what the current situation is. Tamworth's lost a lot of inner city pubs. We've lost the Goodies, we've lost the Impey, we've lost the Albert. The Services Club is moving out. I think it's vital that we do have another quality pub in our CBD. And although Councillor Tickle seems keen to live above a pub, I don't think, coming from a farmer, I'm probably as keen to live above a pub. But I empathise with the fact that it's in a city and it has a vibe. I think that the quality of the development really is going to be of an iconic nature to Tamworth, and it will become a a challenge for others to do the same or better. And I'd like to wish them well. I also want to acknowledge the owners of the Tamworth Hotel who have come and spoken tonight. It doesn't fall on deaf ears. It is important that we hear issues that are relevant to people who are affected. But I think in terms of, from a patronage point of view, I think that Tamworth certainly has the capacity to be able to cope with both in a close proximity. And it's funny how one can make the other lift their level of service and public provision a little bit more too. So I wish them well, and I'll be supporting the proposal.
Councillor Betts.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I too will be supporting the recommendation. The development that we had just before, which was the supermarket out in the southern area of town, and we talked about the vibrancy that it could take away from the CBD. These are the sort of things that counterbalance that type of development out there. It just sort of goes hand in glove. The other thing that I sort of realised that the parking aspect, while it's sort of fairly congested in that area now, but if we're going to go to 50% of carbon emissions by 2035, and the number of electric vehicles that are going to be put in place, and I was looking over when I was going through these annexures and looking at some of the parking aspects, there will be a significant impact on an input into electric vehicles and public transport, which will actually change the focus of what we do as far as the inner city parking, because there will be a real shift in electric vehicles. Thanks, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Coates.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I actually agree wholeheartedly with my fellow councillors, but I just want to reiterate in terms of the built form and scale, when you actually look at the plans and that from Marius Street, I actually find the way it sits behind that beautiful heritage facade actually adds to the look of it. And then when we go down the back and we've got the 8 stories in Dow Street, cast your eyes down to the one at the end of Dow Street and Brisbane Street, it is a very tall building as well. So it's actually being put in an area where there are other very tall buildings, and I feel for that reason, although it is going to be higher, it's not going to stand out as if it was in an area where everything was just one story. The parking was a concern to me initially, but having read the reports and actually agree that the parking requirements in that space are going to complement the daytime demands to some extent. And I think that with people, if they want to come to a place like that and they're aware that perhaps they might have to walk a little way, they make a choice by doing that. But I think the fact that the demands for the premises, the pub and the restaurant will actually fit very, very well hand in glove with the daytime economy there. In terms of the noise and vibration reports, I feel that they've been addressed very well with the guidelines and the Australian standards, and having also looking from a noise perspective, looking at the plans, it appears to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, but most of the walls that actually face the Tamworth Hotel where the accommodation don't actually have windows. So in terms of noise, the impact will be if people go onto their balconies more than anything like that. And I did mention the heritage, but not just the outside external heritage, but some of the photos I've seen of the internal of that building are beautiful. And I think that, as we know, Campbell and Noreen are very well known for doing sympathetic work to heritage buildings, and I believe that that will continue into this building as well. And I guess ultimately, purchasers will decide if they want to live in close proximity to a pub that has loud music at times. And they'll be the ultimate deciders as to whether or not. But thank you, Mr.
Thanks, Councillor Coates. Councillor Sutherland.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. And just running off the back of what Councillor Burke said previously, is that how competition raises the level of service. Well, I'm looking forward to the service at the Menzies because the Tamworth is a bloody good hotel. And so that level of competition, I think, is healthy for the CBD. Reading the report, thank you for the staff, Gina, Sam and Mr Mighty Mitch, for putting together this. As a councillor, I think we have been well informed about the process that this has been on over the last 2 years. I would like to thank all parties involved for the manner of behaviour that this has happened in. I think the conversation's got us to a really good place. The shortfall in parking and the fact that that is those funds will be collected by TRC and moved into our parking fund, which will help us to deliver on what will be our parking strategy and contributing to that for CBD parking moving forward. I think that that's a great outcome for the CBD and knowing that those funds aren't sitting in some magical place, that they're specifically for a specific purpose, and parking in the CBD will be addressed in that space. Just to also mention, I know that one of the speakers, Luke, mentioned around, and Councillor Rodder also talked around the change in legislation, which has now led to the ability for local governments to create special entertainment precincts. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how we can explore that moving forward to make sure that places like our CBD, potentially like the Long Yard, like a number of different spaces that are important to us as a region, can be regulated under that type of special entertainment precinct. So I think that will add more safeguards into the noise and restrictions around noise and the way that can move forward. And I think that we have got to a really reasonable and great result for our region and CBD. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Sullivan. Well, that brings the debate to a close. I have a few things I could say, but I think it's all been said. So really this is a development matter, and I'll ask those that are
Call the
favourite.
division today.
Pardon?
Division.
You want to call for a division?
There's always a division on.
Yeah, it always
There's
is.
always a division. So I'll ask those all in favour to raise their hand. Those against? Thank you. Carried. For those in the audience that wish to leave, you're free to leave. It's you can stay for the rest of the business paper if you wish. I know many who come here just for a couple of items, so for a while.
What time was dinner?
Tomorrow night.
I've lost the pages now. I've lost the pages. Oh, here we go. That's this one. I'll get it from here.
Councillors, that takes us on to the next item on the agenda, which is item 7.3, Northern Regional Planning Panel. Could I have somebody move? Move Councillor Burke, seconded Councillor Southwell. Councillor Burke, you want to speak to that?
Look, just briefly, Mr Mayor, it's great to, I think we should acknowledge Steve Bartlett's contribution to the planning panel. In addition to James Trelaw, they are both worthy servants, and I'm fully aware that the Bartlett family have moved down to, I think it's Newcastle, Warners Bay, and I'd like to wish them all the best in their move down there where they're proximate to their children, and certainly support the recommendation to call for expressions of interest in that particular role.
Any councillors wish to speak against that? Further comments, councillors? No further comments. Just before we do, Councillor Burke, you mentioned recognising Steve Bartlett for his level of service, and that we say in there that we will thank him. I think we don't have to change anything, but I think we will write to him with that recognition. So, councillors, I put all those in favour, say aye.
Aye.
Those against, carried. We'll move straight on to 7.4, Voluntary Planning Agreement. Could I have someone move and second that, please? Councillor Betts, second to Councillor Tickle. Councillor Betts, you wish to speak on that? Anyone wish to speak against that? Councillor Rodder.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, I think the voluntary planning agreement forced on us by Planning New South Wales is a disgrace and a sellout to the people of and the residents of Nundle and Hanging Rock. Our council twice objected to the proposal for a range of reasons, including but not limited to impacts to the environment, infrastructure, buildings, heritage, roads and amenity, and now to many, I believe, we are selling out for 30 pieces of silver, or in current figures around $9 million. I believe this is wrong because our objections on the one hand are completely blunted by our other hand, holding out for cash for an agreement that should be made after and if an approval, if one is made. There has also been no consultation with residents on this matter either. And finally, I also believe that councillors should have the power to determine these on a case-by-case basis, not delegation of the staff. Sadly, I believe we've fallen for the Planning New South Wales plans, hook, line and sinker. You can forget consultation or complaining about impacts of these proposals to our residents within this region in the future, because they'll say, well, here's your voluntary planning agreement, that'll mitigate any of your concerns in relation to those matters. I realise that our objection to NG's Hills of Gold proposal stands, but to a lot of people, they'll believe that they feel that we've sold out. So I want to say to the people of Nundu and Hanging Rock who are opposed to this proposal, money can't buy what you will lose, and I believe that Nundu and Hanging Rock are both assets worth far more than $9 million.
Thanks. I'll just make a couple of comments here, if I may, to your, what you had to say, and that is that we have written objections to the government in relation to it. In terms of the voluntary planning agreement, we either have one, and we've got a policy on the voluntary planning agreement. There is some slight modifications in this. However, the staff will not be making a decision on what those voluntary planning agreements look like. It has to come back to the councillors. Further speakers. Councillor Sutherland.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you for that clarification, because I think the message is important that it's made clear that entering into this VPA isn't selling out our community. Now, it's making sure that as a community, as a region, that we are making sure that we're looked after and the right processes are set up moving forward, that there's consistency. As a council, we have made a really clear statement through our sustainability strategy that we are looking to embrace renewable energies. And renewable energy is a priority within that plan, but it has to be done right. And it has to be done right and it has to be done in the right places. And I think that as a council, the message has been made clear that the opposition to the location of this particular project is not suitable. And as you mentioned, Mr Mayor, has been objected to publicly many times. But the fact is that if we do not enter into this agreement or a VPA or have a consistent policy, then our community and our region run the risk of not being able to negotiate on fair terms on what is in the best interest of community. And so I feel that the recommendation that's put forward is very thorough, and as any policy, it can evolve and it can change. And if the state government in some future time create their own guidelines, I'm sure we'll have a conversation about do we evolve our policy to make sure it aligns with consistency across New South Wales. And so I am in full support of this recommendation and would like to make sure that our community and our region have the message that this is the need for this VPA and we are still in objection to the project itself.
Other speakers? Councillor Cates.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I totally agree. Just because we're saying we want a VPA doesn't mean to say that we're actually agreeing to the Hills of Gold wind farm development. But I think the other thing too, we did actually adopt the policy in September this year in terms of the renewable energy. However, as the paperwork has stated, we're also going to consider variations to the principles for specific circumstances. And that's really, really important because each one of these renewable energy projects that comes in front of us is going to be different in terms of whether it's wind, whether it's battery power, whether it's solar or whatever. And all of the locations and the impacts on the community will all be different. So we need that flexibility. It's absolutely necessary so we can ensure the best outcomes for the community that's affected, but also for the wider community as well. And I think that, as you said, Mr Mayor, that each one of those VPAs will come before us as a council. So we will ensure that the community that's impacted will be looked after in the best possible way that we can. Thank you.
Further speakers? Councillor Southwell.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I think Councillor Sutherland, sometimes he waffles on, but tonight he really articulated it quite well. I think, I don't think this is saying that as a council we're supporting the Hills of Gold wind farm. What this is about, if we do nothing here and just say, okay, cool, we're not going to worry about this sort of policy, we'll wait and see what happens, the community is who will miss out. That's who will miss out. So we can sit on our hands and do nothing, and then if it gets approved by the state government and some of these large-scale renewable energy companies say, oh, you know what, it's already approved, we're going to give you, here's a little bit that you can have, but whatever, we're approved. This is about preventing that, and this is about standing up for the community and making sure that they receive the amount of funding that they are entitled to as a community. This is really putting a policy in place around how we stand. It's also backing up some of the larger council discussions that have been happening from a country mayor's perspective, I believe, and Mr Mayor, you may want to speak to that. But I'd like to thank Andrew Spicer for putting this together. There's been a fair bit of discussion around this and how it would look and whether it's handled internally or externally and what it's going to look like. But this is not about endorsing particular projects at all. This is about standing up for our communities and making sure that there is money on the table. And $9 million is not a small amount of money at all. And that will go a very long way into a project for some of these small regional communities. So I'm very much in favour of this. And I thank our team for putting forward a proactive policy such as this.
Further speakers? Councillor Mears.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, I'd just like to support this as well, but also state, as many of the councillors have, this is not in particular about Nundle and agreeing to the energy program development out there. From the time we came on council, the council's been firmly behind the people of Nundle, as have all the councillors. I think at one stage we stood up and publicly stated not in Nundle ever, but unfortunately, as the time has gone by, this decision now has been taken out of our hands. By putting into a voluntary planning agreement, at least we have the possibility of intervening prior to the developments being approved and getting something for the community. Is $9 million enough? It's a lot of money, but it may never pay back the people of Nundle if this project goes ahead to what their expectations are. And having spent a lot of time at Nundle, like many of us have, not that I'm opposed to renewable energy, but I will hate to see those windmills on top of that mountain range. And that's one of the reasons we've fought so hard against it. Unfortunately, now the government, with its decisions, puts our backs against the wall, and this is the only option that we've got, is supporting those communities going into the future.
Councillor Berg.
Mr Mayor, I wasn't going to say anything, but I felt I should come to the defence of my fellow councillor Sutherland with regards to waffling. I think that he makes a lot of sense, and he's been quite brief in his comments as well. VPA, I think, is really important. I think, to me, I understand that it's separate very much to the approval process and the support of the Hills of Gold wind farm up there. And as my fellow councillors have said, to miss out on the opportunity, we wouldn't know in the future what we may get. We certainly may find out what we lose out on, and that's not where we want to be.
Further comments? Councillors, I'll just make one comment. For media in the room and those that might be listening on, we are quite clear and have been very clear as an organisation, that's the wrong place for those windmills. Everybody sitting around this table has made their position quite clear. The staff have made their position quite clear. It's with government that they're making the decision. It's gone to the planning commission. They'll make a decision based on whatever. But Brooke, you're related to company mayors. It's actually Quorum. It's a coalition of mayors where there's renewable energy, and they have made their position quite clear. We've supported that. We've adopted the policy of 1.5% plus. We were looking for 50% up front on those particular developments, and understanding that we'll keep pushing down that track into the future. We will have some developments that are right on our boundary, some in our area, some in other areas. There'll be lots of opportunities in the future for us to look at so many variances in how this is going to apply. But we as an organisation, we as councillors will make those decisions. So that's about all I'll say. Councillors, I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against?
No.
You want that?
Division would be great. Thanks, Mr.
Okay.
Mayor. Thank you.
We'll move on to items. Where are we? We move on to 8, and we'll move into item 8.1. Northern Inland Centre Sporting Excellence Sports Hub. Could I have somebody move the recommendation? Councillor Sutherland, seconded. Councillor Southwood, do you wish to speak to that, Councillor Sutherland?
Just briefly, please, Mr. Mayor. And just that we've had a bicentennial master plan done before, and it needs amending because we have some significant projects that need to be included. You know, it's great to see the arts and precincts being included within that space. Now we have the University of New England also attached to it.
Point of order, sorry, you're talking about the wrong thing. Sports.
The next one.
8.1.
You're waffling on the next one.
Waffling. That's great, Mr. Mayor, 'cause I was going to move that one too. Yeah, that's fantastic. And that is that when we talk around the Centre Institute of Sporting Excellence, being able to include that and update that to reflect our decision previously around the aquatics facilities within that space is fantastic to see.
Anyone wish to speak against that recommendation? Any further comments on that recommendation? Councillor Southwell.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just briefly, I did send this comment through earlier. It is a great plan, and I'm glad to see that we have a master plan for this precinct. My concern that I raised earlier today, and apologies if it was written back and I've missed it, but there isn't really an identified timeline around, you know, who, when, where, why, with some of these things and some of these priorities here. And I know funding does change, and we're obviously going to be going for grants when applicable, but I just wondered why there isn't more of an action matrix, you know, which we normally have at the back of these reports. So if one of the directors could answer that. I know, for example, shade and seating in this precinct has, you know, the community have said to me we need more of that. So just wondered if that could be addressed.
I'll make a quick comment, Councillor Southwell. With many of our master plans they're put in place, we obviously haven't got the funding to do all of the things that are stated in them, and quite often if we made the mistake of putting timelines around all of the stuff in those master plans, we'd be criticised by the community over the coming years for not being able to deliver what we said we would deliver to a certain timeline. The master plan gives direction on where we're going. Timelines are obviously, I guess, impacted on by funding and changes to the environment along the way. So unless you want to make any other comments, Mr. General Manager.
No, Mr. Mayor.
Further comments? I will put the recommendation. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against, carried. We'll move from there on to item 8.2. Var, you want to say something?
It's yours.
Move, Councillor Sutherland. Seconded by Councillor Southwood again.
Mr. Mayor, just fantastic to see a master plan. Thanks for the staff for pulling it together. I know that the decision was made earlier on in the year to talk around what the end of the life of the town pool would look like, and being able to reflect that in that master plan now put some clarity to the community of what the commitment is for that space moving forward. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Anyone wish to speak against? Any further comments? Councillor Mears.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I think this is another wonderful opportunity to move Tamworth forward. As you know, I'm the hobo of the council, that I travel all over the place and have to race back at times. But what I can say is I do a lot of travelling throughout this region, as far as Gundawindi, Lightning Ridge, and I'm forever having people come up to me that have visited Tamworth, so that the Bicentennial Park is one of the best developments they've seen, not regionally, but that they've seen. If we can improve on that and develop it into an even better space, I think that would enhance the tourism to Tamworth, and hope from then we could spread that sort of accommodation that to, you know, outside of the CBD or outside of Tamworth, and to bring other areas in. Something that I would like to look at too in the future of development of something similar on a much smaller scale in many of our regional locations as well. But all credit to the past council and the current council and all the staff that have worked on that project, because it certainly is a shining light to the people I meet throughout the region.
Further comments, councillors? Councillor Southwell.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I know we have a big business paper, but I didn't want to let this one slide. I think this is extremely important, this particular report. As Councillor Mears said, we are the envy of some of our regional neighbours and smaller neighbours, and I think I just really love the way that this is set out. I think it's all encompassing. I think Councillor Tickle will be very busy with her tree committee with some of the expansion of trees and whatnot throughout this plan. But to have this dedicated plan in this area is only going to enhance our city and our region. It's multifaceted. It will integrate and with pedestrian access and bike access where it includes the Peel River, which really is an amazing spot. And I think that when this goes through, it will be an absolute asset to our region and our city. Obviously, we're sometimes criticised around having some of these master plans before we have the funding, but that is basically how it works. So we go and we do all the plans and we work out where things can go and whatnot. And then when grants become available, that is when we can utilise some of these plans, because we've done all the hard work, and then we can then go and say, radio, we've already done all the hard work here, please give us the funding to implement A, B and C. I'm also very grateful that within this plan, the chess set, which is our new chess set in Bicentennial Park, is included in the plans there, a great asset for that area, and something that you can do with your kids on school holidays, which start next week. So very excited to see this implemented. Thank you.
Thank you. Further comments? There being no further comments. Oh, Councillor Burke, did you want to say something?
No, I was just moving to mark my paper.
Councillors, before I put it to the vote, just a little history lesson. For those of you that may not know, Bicentennial Park was developed in the mid-80s. And the council of the day was very divided on whether they should take away number 1, number 2 and number 3 Oval and create Bicentennial Park. It was the mayoral's casting vote that moved for that Bicentennial Park to be developed. It actually cost her job at the next election. The community was so divided. But can you imagine today if that great decision wasn't made and they didn't have the strength to make the right decision for the future, for the wider community, it would still be 3 Ovals and it would be nothing. I just say that, councillors, because sometimes we are challenged with having to make a decision on things that are somewhat maybe divisive within the community, but with the knowledge that you've got, you try and make the best decision to grow your community in the best possible way. And I think back then they did that, and the Mayor of the day, June Greer, made the right decision, and I think we can thank her for what she did. And Brooke, speaking about what you've spoken about there, we're going to take this to the next level, and thank you, Councillor Sutherland, for moving that. I think we're moving in a very good direction, and thank you very much. I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against, carried. Councillors, we'll move on to the next item, which is 8.3, updates to the stormwater management. Could I have someone move that? Move Councillor Cade, second Councillor Berg. Sorry. Councillor Cade, do you wish to speak to that?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just very, very briefly. First of all, I want to thank Aidan Pugh for writing this report. It was quite detailed, and it's also really great to see that we now have comprehensive documents that for all of our communities to ensure that the objectives of good stormwater management are met. Because looking through it, we've had many, many different studies and many different reports, etc., over the years. So finally, we've got some addressing things in a very succinct way. Thank you.
Anyone wish to speak against the report? Councillor Tickle.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, and also thanks to the staff and involved, Aidan and many staff across other directorates, and also the community provided a lot of feedback, and of course that was all addressed in formulating this final report. Of particular interest, and I thank the staff, was the inclusion of water-sensitive urban design. This is something that has been raised in council over the years, so it is indeed very pleasing and positive for a move to include this. It has many positive environmental effect. Water-sensitive urban design is a process of using engineering or else just natural forms to filter the water, therefore reducing matter that ends up in our rivers and streams. It's also a way of watering gardens and watering parks on its way through to rivers and stream, and it filtering on the way. So water is something that is probably on everyone's number one at the moment and always. And this is just another way of utilising water, but importantly helping to purify our waterways. So again, thanks to everyone involved and to the community. I mean, it's received a lot of feedback from the community.
Further comment, councillors? Councillor Rodder.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just, some concerns that I had from members of the public were in relation to insurance premiums from these maps. You know, they're getting out to insurance companies. They would say, "Oh well, you're now in a floodplain." But there should be no justification for increasing premiums based on this information. Secondly, will it be overly onerous for those people wishing to develop the land within those mapped areas?
Through you, Mr General Manager.
Through you, Mr Mayor. The insurance, Councillor Rodder, the insurance companies have their own flood information. They can use councils, they don't have to, they generally have their own. And my understanding would be that those existing properties are already insured, and it's just about controlling future development.
The second question was in relation, to the plans. Development wouldn't necessarily be overly onerous in those areas of the mapped sites.
That probably could be a question for you, Jenny.
Through Mr Mayor, depends. It's possible, depending on what the state government policy is at the time, and that often overrides what we can permit in terms of anything flooding these days. There's really, really stringent controls, and it includes the overland flow. Not so sure about the actual storm water. I don't know if Peter can add to it, but I know in terms of overland flow, that's now included in flood controls. So it's certainly more difficult to develop in some of those areas. I don't know if that answers your question either, or whether Peter can add to that.
It's a complex matter. Further comments, councillors? Being no further comments, I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against, carried. Councillors, move to item 8.4, Local Traffic Committee. Move Councillor Betts, seconded Councillor Mears.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I'll be very, very brief, and I won't waffle on because we've got a big business paper. So just one or two things. The number of items is in relation that there's been 3 traffic committees being postponed, and they've all been lumped into one. Transport New South Wales hadn't been available on 2 of them. And just one other thing, that previous councillor Charles Impey had a passion of the bicycle track up to the Forest Hills and the past the William Calrossi, whatever it is now, and that looks as though it's on track for being subjected to future funding, and it's been planned. So it's a great news story, Mr Mayor. Thank you.
Anyone wish to speak against that? Any further comments? Councillor Rodder.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, I am, like Councillor Betts, I am pleased with dot point 13 and others that mention the shared path network. People at Windmill Downs and those areas have been waiting for shared path from there down Tribe Street to the CBD to mitigate the traffic issues and safety. Anyone that has actually driven along there when there's, I've seen one of those gopher vehicles driving on the road, and it's so dangerous. And you just hope that they get to their destination safely. But this will ensure that, and I certainly can't wait till funds are available for it to be delivered. And I guess the same in relation to the Forest Road to extend it will be a great asset as well.
For the comments, Councillor Mears.
I'd just like to extend my thanks to the committee and for their leadership by the chair, Councillor Betts. I was actually excited last week because I actually, with my day job, out of town a lot, and I was going to get to one of these meetings, so I was sitting there all ready to go, and I rang Councillor Betts and he was on his mower. The meeting had been cancelled. I didn't pick it up on my email, so I'm sitting there really excited to be part of the committee, and unfortunately this time I missed out again.
Further comments, councillors? Councillor Sutherland.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just to say, exciting to see safe transport from that active transport route from Clara Lane, Moore Creek, and Forest Road. But also just to mention, it's great to see the plans underway from the traffic perspective to support our parade back in the Country Music Festival. I know the community's been looking back for that level of excitement back within the festival, and to see that take that level of consideration for the traffic committee, I think it's a great step forward, and moving back to getting the parade back in the festival. Thank you.
Further comments, councillors? There being no further comments, I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against, carried. We'll move from there on to New South Wales Government Water Meeting Review. It's there a report to be received and noted. Could I move in a second? Move Councillor Burke, second to Councillor Sutherland. Councillor Burke, you wish to speak to that? Anyone wish to speak against that? Any further comments? I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against, carried. We'll move from there on to item 8.6, Manila treatment, former Manila water treatment plant. I'll move in a second and move Councillor Tickle, second to Councillor Coates. Wish to speak to that, Councillor Tickle?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I need to point out the complications and the expenses that we have with water. I mean, this is going to be another huge cost to remediate that, to remove and the infrastructure from there, and then hopefully be able to sell the land. And just in relation to the cost of these things, these are all of the costs that the everyday person perhaps doesn't realise occurs. And like the new Manila water treatment plants, which is a beautiful illustration of that in our papers, just under $20 million. And so $20 million is a lot of money. And, we've had a lot of conjecture about our recent proposal for a rate increase, but that's the sort of huge amounts of money, not just for Manila, Barraba, we've spent a lot, Nundle, all the outer communities, and of course in Tamworth we spend a lot as well on just the water infrastructure. So I did want to highlight that because this is not going to come cheap, what's required. And so all of that contributes to all our ongoing maintenance and our forecasts, and hence all the other identified needs that we have, and many times completely out of our control. But it will be a costly exercise.
Anyone wish to speak against? Any further comments? I'll move the recommendation. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against, carried. Move on to item 8.7. I'll move it. Councillor Betts, second to Councillor Mears. Councillor Betts, you wish to speak
No,
to
Mr.
that?
Mayor. Great report.
Anyone wish to speak against that? No. Further comments? I'll put the recommend. Councillor Burke.
Mr. Mayor, just a question on removal of the old house. Is it necessary that that house is removed?
I'll have to ask Mr. Logan.
Councillor Burke, the property is considered at high risk in the event of flooding, so we wouldn't be able to allow tenants to go in there, and on that basis, it's not of any value to us. It's being vandalised at the moment. repeatedly, and Councillor Tickle did ask whether it could be removed and relocated. No, it's a slab on ground for about 2/3 of the structure, so it can't be removed. So I do believe that demolition is our only option.
Thank you. Further comments? There being no further comments, I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against, carried. We'll move on to item 8.8. Proposed police. Move Councillor Betts, second to Councillor Coates. Councillor Betts,
No,
you wish
Mr.
to speak to that? Anyone wish to speak against? Any comments? There being no, Councillor Southall.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I am not against this this particular report. I think it's been a good report, but I guess just a comment to say that it would have been good to have a little bit more information or a little bit more discussion about this, just because it is, I guess, newer technology which is kind of evolving all the time. And I have asked a few questions to Mr. Logan, which he's answered in relation to the size of the subdivision, etc. But yeah, just in relation to this particular matter, it would have been good to possibly have a little bit more discussion if there's future matters like this in the future.
Comments, councillors? Councillor Coates?
Just very briefly, Mr. Mayor, when we actually had this presented to us in a workshop, I was very excited about the potential that could bring to our community, but also the fact that you know, we may actually get subsidised electricity for the water waste treatment plant at Westdale. Thank you.
Thank you. Further comments, councillors? There being no further comments, I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against, carried. We'll move on to 8.9. Could I have a mover and seconder? Move Councillor, Councillor Tickle, second to Councillor Coates. Sorry, I was looking the other way. It's moved and seconded. Are you going to speak to that? Anyone wish to speak against that? Any further comments? Recommendation. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against, carried. Move on to item 8.10. Move Councillor Betts, seconded Councillor Southall. Speak to that, councillor?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Anyone wish to speak against that? Further comments? Put the recommendation. All those in favour?
Aye.
Those against, carried. Move to item 8.11. The organics recycling. Could I have a mover and a seconder? Move Councillor Mears, second to Councillor Coates. Councillor Mears, you wish to speak to that?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Anyone wish to speak against that? There being no further comments, put the recommendation. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against, carried. Councillors, that takes us on to 9, Governance, Strategy and Finance. And we have the Sister City Protocol with Gore in New Zealand. Who can I have a move? Move Councillor Mears, Councillor Sutherland. Do you wish to speak to that? Councillor Mears?
Just briefly, Mr. Mayor, as people might know, I'm the representative, deals with Gore. And I'd love to go there one day, but obviously with the budgets and we pay our own way if we go. So I'm heading to New Zealand in March of next year. And with your permission, if I can get there, I'd love to visit and just say hello to their council as well.
I'm sure we should have a conversation about that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Anyone wish to speak against that recommendation? Any further comments? Councillor Southwood, you had your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No, just it was a quick question earlier around what are the main changes. I think our General Manager answered that saying the main changes to this policy was really just around names, because some of the names had changed. Just wanted to confirm that with, I don't think the Acting Director Peter Ross is there, but just confirming that there was no real change to this policy. We're only going there once every 2 years, and then the Gore visit is also once every 2 years. Is there anything else? Okay.
Mr. Mayor, and that has always been year about with Gore, given the proximity. Some of our other sister cities are on a longer time frame, but yeah, the real change around this is just to update the protocol to say this is what the visit schedule will be, and these are the current mayors that are signing off on the protocol and so on.
Further comments, councillors? Further comments? I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour? Aye. No against? Carried. 9.2, facility improvement, councillor Cade, seconded councillor Tickle. Councillor Casey wishes to speak to that.
Just very briefly, Mr Mayor, thank you. I just want to recognise the work that our Section 355 committees actually do, because they work very hard to actually manage our assets, taking pride in the promotion and the maintenance and improving the assets. So for me, whenever we can provide them with some financial assistance, I'm more than happy to do that. But I also want to thank them very much for the work that they do.
Anyone wish to speak against that recommendation? Further comments on that recommendation? There being no further comments, I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against, carried. We'll move on to line 3, council investments. Councillor Betts, seconded councillor Mears. Wish to speak to that, councillor Betts?
No, Mr Mayor.
Anyone wish to speak against? Any further comments? I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against, carried. We'll move straight to item 9.4. Councillor Tickle, seconded councillor Sutherland. Anyone wish to speak against? Anyone wish to make comment? I'll put the recommendation. All those. Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Mr Mayor.
I did look and you didn't have your hand up quick enough.
I briefly just want to say that having looked through all of these financial reports, it brings a good understanding as to why we actually put this SRV in recently. And anyone that's still having doubts about it, I think I'd certainly highly recommend that they have a look at it, because we've got some of our key indicators are starting to downward trend. And although we're reaching benchmarks at the moment, what we don't want to do is find ourselves in a situation where we're actually in a hole before we know it. So I think that acknowledging things like our net operation results before capital gains actually went down last year. Sorry, not capital gains, capital grants. And also that our continuing operation results, it was $12.9 million lower than the previous.
Point of order, sorry, councillor Coates, aren't we up to 9.5? My apologies.
Point of order. Point of order.
I was getting ahead of myself.
So, and I guess I just want to finish off with saying that in one of the auditor's reports that there was a statement made that councillors are responsible for assessing the council's ability to continue as a going concern. And the only way that we can do that is actually get an understanding of these sorts of figures that are produced in these, even though they're very detailed and very onerous to read. That's how we get an understanding of what's actually going on in our organisation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Further comments? Or anyone wish to speak against? Further comments?
Just to reiterate what Councillor Coates is saying, is the complexity of the report and the detail within it is made a lot easier when you start to understand the importance of ratios, you know, and as the dashboard being able to look at what we can benchmark against, and it gives, you know, a really good indication of those trends as we move along. And so it's very helpful to have those ratios so clearly outlined within the report.
Further comments? There being no further comments, I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Again, carried. We move on to 9.5 now. Councillor South, do you want to move 9.5?
Sure. Thanks.
Second to Councillor Mears. Want to speak to that, Councillor Southwell?
Thank you. No, thank you.
Anyone wish to speak against? Any further comment? Councillor Mears.
Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor. I guess most of the councillors and I hope the public know that anything of this nature that assists our residents is a good thing. My only concern is it obviously, with changes to several of these type policies, that obviously council have listened to the concerns many of the residents made in regards to the special rate variation, and some of those people will, I fear, struggle financially. So having something of this nature in place to assist them in those cases is never a bad thing. My only concern is that what we're doing is like a payday loan circumstance, or unfortunately when farmers suffer drought, hardship, bushfire, they're offered loans which help them in that immediate space, but it doesn't help you in a year's time or 2 years or 3 years. If you don't have the income, whether you're producing products or unemployed or a pensioner or, we've got a lot of residents that rent. They won't get any assistance in a hardship policy because their rate increases will be paid straight onto their rent. So they get, from what I can see here, nothing in regards to the rate relief because they don't pay rates. However, they will pay through their rent. As I said, I think it's a great idea to make these opportunities available to people, because many have said to me that they will default in their rent or fall behind in their rate, so yes, we can help them as much as we can, but again, I fear that we're just passing the buck from year to year, and at some point, people are then going to have to remit those monies, and if I am correct, as further on, even to the point that if they pass, those monies will be recouped from their estate. I think that's a crying shame, but I understand the position that council's in. I always said right through the process with the SRV that I understand the needs from both sides. I don't need to be reminded about that every week. I chose to vote the way I did. Other councillors voted the other way, but I did understand the perspective of council, but that of the residents as well.
Thanks, Councillor Mears. Any speakers? There are no other speakers. I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against? Carried. We'll move to 9.6, draft rate-based pensioner policy. Councillor Tickle, seconded Councillor Cates. You wish to speak to that? No. Anyone wish to speak against? Anyone wish to make comment? Councillor Southall.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Just briefly, I'd like to encourage any community members in the room or pensioners or anyone affected by some of these policies tonight. They are on exhibition for 28 days. If you would like to provide feedback, this is the time to provide your feedback. Have a read of the policy. If you think it could include something else or maybe something's not relevant, that's the time to send your feedback and your comments back to council so that they can be considered. I also wanted to highlight within the report here that it does say the intention of the policy is to encourage those facing financial hardship to reach out to council and give staff the flexibility to accommodate their individual circumstances, and that pretty much summarises what some of these policies are about. I think council does understand the struggles that our community is going through with rising costs of living, rising inflation, interest rates are going up, costs are going up, materials, it's expensive and it's hard for people. So we do understand that. Please reach out if you need a hand and our staff will be accommodating. Thanks.
Further comments, councillors? I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against? Carried. We'll move from there on to item 9.8. Seven. Mover, Councillor Vett, seconded Councillor Berg. Wish to speak to that?
Yeah, Mr Mayor.
Anyone wish to speak against? Any further comments? Councillor Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd just like to reiterate my previous utterances in regards to this. I think it's a great innovation to change these policies on council's behalf to support and assist people. Part of that necessity is I would assume, was in regards to the special rates variation of people believing they may not or could not pay their rates with the rises or proposed. And again, I will reiterate that I do know council's position and I sympathise with that, but I also sympathise with our ratepayers who may now have to struggle. And as we all know, the worst people in the world to put their hand up for assistance is generally men. Well, we're too bullheaded and stupid, with like things like depression, and that's why we have programs for that. And my fear is that a lot of people, especially the historical breadwinners of the family, will not be putting their hands up for assistance, even if they need it.
Further comments, councillors? Being no further comments, I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. We'll move then straight into item 9.8. Move Councillor Betts, seconded Councillor Cates. Councillor Betts, you wish to speak to that?
Yeah, just for the fact that we had a workshop and the recommendation is that all councillors do the Working with Children certificate, and there's two aspects to it. One is if you're a volunteer in a volunteer organisation, it's free, but if you do it through a work organisation, there's a cost. So I would encourage councillors to do it because it's not hard, it's quite easy, and it needs to be done. Thanks.
Anyone wish to speak against that recommendation? Further comments? Councillor Southwell.
Unfortunately, I missed this workshop, but in brief, I think anything that improves the safety of children throughout our community, I'm always supportive of. I have done the Working with Children check myself, and I've sent that off to the team. And look, I think it's just an important thing to look at. So, very supportive of this recommendation. Thanks.
Further comments, councillors? Councillor Rodder.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just ask a question in relation to the title. Is that not legislation now, is not an act rather than a bill? Is it, or is it still before the Parliament? Because when I went searching, it looked like it had become an act. You've been
Mr. Mayor, I think that's correct.
Yeah. So should that be amended? Should we amend it?
We need to.
We'll just note it in the minutes.
We'll note it. Councillors, any further comment? Councillor Burke.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. And look, I'd just rise to address some of the comments that were made to us in the workshop on this that Councillor Southwell said that you missed out on, and I'm not saying it because you missed out on it, rather to just highlight two important things. One is it's all about reducing harm to children, but to increase identifying, reporting and responding appropriately. The one thing that blew me away was that it takes, on average, to report these things from an incident as a child, 29 years over the grievances that have occurred. I just think that that's an appalling situation we find ourselves in as a community in New South Wales and Australia, but in particular in New South Wales. And I think that anything we can do to avoid that sort of an infliction on our young people growing up is a good thing. Second thing is, I was very pleased to hear that our council is well ahead of the game compared to other councils in terms of the compliance that we have to have done this.
Further comments, councillors? Councillor Mears.
Yeah, sorry, I'll make it quick. I'd just like to support what Councillor Burke was saying in regards to the unfortunate position we are in with the length of time it takes. And I've been with my current employer for about 16 years. And unfortunately, if you look right across the state, multiple governments, even when there are significant risks of serious harm reported, only 35% of those children are seen. And it just comes down to nothing but budget. I don't think there's much we as a council can do, but I think the public need to, raise these issues and speak to our local members, irrespective of their colour or creed or their leanings left or right. We need to be speaking to our politicians across the entire state about we need to look after these children, and much better than we're doing now.
Further comments, councillors? There being no further comments, I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against, carried. We go on to item 9.9. I have a mover and a second. I move Councillor Coates, second to Councillor Sutherland. Councillor Coates, you wish to speak to that?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Once again, a really succinct report from Cheryl Young. I just want to highlight that the couple of things that the variations, and that is the work at ALEC, the Community Centre and the Pilot Training Facility, as well as the new line for financial services. Both of those things were actually highlighted by the ARIC, the Audit Risk and Improvement Committee, earlier this year in terms of asset maintenance, but also in terms of our fraud policy as well. So I think it's good to see that we're actually acting on those things that have been identified.
Thank you. Further, anyone wish to speak against that recommendation? Further comments? No further comments. I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against, carried. We'll move on to 9.10, and this relates to the Australia Day events. Councillors, we did mention earlier there is no longer one at Mundell, so we'll be looking for councillors to go to Barraba, Bendigo, Katingal, Manila and Tamworth. Could I have somebody move that recommendation? Councillor Mears, seconded councillor Rodder. Would you like to speak to that or just move into selecting councillor?
I think we just move into selecting, Mr Mayor.
And where would you like to go?
I'd like to go to Barraba.
Barraba. Councillor Sutherland.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just before we get into the process of selecting places, I would like to ask my fellow councillors if I'm able to abstain from participating in the celebration of the 26th of January for reasons that are very complex. And if I could provide context just really briefly, Mr Mayor, I would really appreciate that. And that is that the 26th of January has been a day that Aboriginal people right across the country have identified as a day that's inappropriate to celebrate, signified by Bill Ferguson from Dubbo, who in 1938 protested in the Aboriginal Progressive Association at the foot of Parliament House and kick-started this idea of the Day of Mourning. The Day of Mourning, which started off from 1838, which identified the 26th of January as a day of mourning long before it became recognised as the day that we celebrate today. Prior to that, just a bit more personal context, Mr Mayor, is 100 years prior, in 1838, my old grandfather, his name was Peter James Cutmore, and he was the lone survivor of the Waterloo Creek massacre that happened just west of here, out near Maureen. And so the personal connection for myself is connected to the deep connection of Aboriginal people across the community, which would like to just make that case really clear, and why I would like to make the point that I won't be able to represent council for those events on the 26th of January.
Councillor Sutherland, fully understand your position and respect your position.
Thank you.
Councillor Coates.
Mr Mayor, I would like to go to Bendemeer, if that's okay, please.
Bendemeer.
And can I just add that I fully understand your position, Councillor Sutherland, and I support it very much as well.
Councillor Burke.
Mr Mayor, and similarly endorse Councillor Sutherland, absolutely. Could I do Tamworth, please?
Yeah. I know Brooke has rung me about Tamworth.
And I'll be there too.
We might have spare.
Councillor Tickle.
Tamworth, please.
Sorry?
Tamworth.
Tamworth. Councillor Beth.
The Tingle, I'll be in charge with the Lions Club, the gunboat throwing competition.
The old league, did you say?
About Manila, have we got anyone interested in going to Manila?
Looks like it's me, Mr Mayor.
Oh, Councillor Rodder to Manila.
That's it.
Nundle. Let's do Nundle.
So that basically fills all of those positions. So Councillor Mears, you moved the recommendation. Are you happy to continue to move that with you attending Barraba, Councillor Cates, Bendemeer, Councillor Betts, Tingle, Councillor Rodder, Manila, and at Tamworth myself, Brooke, Helen and Bede.
Yes, Mr Mayor, and I'd also like to offer my support to Councillor Sutherland as well. Try and build in. Sorry? Yeah, just pass that motion, or go ahead with that motion, and also support the comments made by Councillor Sutherland. It can be a very divisive day, and hopefully some of that can be discussed openly at some of these events to help alleviate some of the issues.
Who was the seconder there, sorry? You second that, Councillor Roddy, you happy to second that with all those names listed?
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor.
I'll put that recommendation into the councillors. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against? Carried. So we move from there on to item 9.11, integrated planning and reporting. Got a mover and a second. I move Councillor Cates, Councillor Betts. Councillor Cates, you wish to speak to that?
Just to recognise the amount of work that's actually gone into this, but also the amount of reading. If anyone decided they were going to read it, if you'd read the financial reports, you would have already read them. But the achievements that we actually have made as a region have been really quite amazing, and I look forward to moving on and actually developing the region and adding more assets and in the future.
Thank you. Anyone wish to speak against? Anyone wish to make comment? I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against, carried. Councillors, we move into community services, 10 on the business paper, policy updates for the gallery. Mover and a second, I move Councillor Betts, seconded Councillor Mears. Speak to that.
Oh, it's a great opportunity and totally support it, Mr Mayor.
Anyone wish to speak against? Any further comments? Councillor Southwood.
Just a question, please, Mr Mayor. The third paragraph, or it's highlighted in the report, that a lot of this relates to the decommissioning of art and which I fully understand. It does mention here that under any items donated under the Australian Government's Cultural Gifts Program are removed from the collection. They will not be returned to donors because they've already received a tax deduction for the gift. And I'm just wondering where these will go if they're not being returned. Where are they going to be going then?
The General Manager, I might ask. Bridget could make comment.
Through you, Mr Mayor, the idea is this particular wording is a recommendation at the Australian Taxation Office, and it basically says that we can't to the donor because they've already received the tax benefit. In that particular scenario, we would hopefully be keeping the works because we would have made that informed decision. But if we have to, for some reason, decommission, we would need to find a like institution, say another gallery that might collect the works, or another museum that might collect the works in that scenario. So there's options.
Thank you. If I can just ask following that, is it possible we can sell artwork or we can't? Oh, sorry. Through you, Mr Mayor, is it possible in that situation that we could sell the artwork or we can't?
Through Mr Mayor, so Councillor Southwood, the way it works is because they get a tax deduction for the value of the artwork. If you sold it to somebody else, then they could potentially donate it to another organisation and then they could seek a tax benefit for that. So that's why once it's been gifted under that particular scheme, it can only be done, as Bridget has said, and that is that you need to give it to a like organisation so that it stays in public domain as opposed to back in a private collection.
Further comments, councillors? Yeah.
Just quickly, Mr Mayor, and that's that it's just great to see a policy reflecting council's commitment to supporting the collection, the maintenance of public art. And public art plays a massive part within our region, and to have that reflected in such an in-depth policy in this manner, I think, is a great step moving forward.
Thank you. Further comments, councillors? There being no further comments, I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against, carried. Councillors, we'll move into 11 and then 12, but before I call for a motion to move into closed council, Mr General Manager, is there any requested any items in closed council to be brought forward into?
No, Mr.
Anyone in the audience wishing any of the items in closed council to be brought forward? There is none. So, councillors, I'll ask for a motion to move into closed council. Move Councillor Betts, seconded Councillor Cage. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
I'm going to quickly go.
Oh, you're going to smoke, aren't you?
No.
Councillor Betts, it's 8:30, I know, but
Yeah, that's right.
You don't want that. You don't want that.
No, I talk too much, so.
Oh,
I mean,
accusation. Trying to backpedal.
I recognise it. Stop waffling, right?
I love it.
Anyone need that?
I might call the General Manager now to report.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillors, this is the report from the closed session of the Ordinary Council meeting held on the 12th of December 2023. In closed council night, you considered 10 items of business. For all 10 of those, you adopted the recommendations as per your business papers.
Councillors, I'll motion to accept that. Councillor Burke, second Councillor Southwell. All those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? Thank you, councillors. That is our